How's it going, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Average Joe, the series where I'll be taking a look at a vehicle and telling you whether or not I believe it's worth the average player's time, or in this case, their money. On today's episode, we're going to be looking at the VIDAR. VIDAR? VIDAR? However it's pronounced, we're going to be looking at that. The VIDAR is a rank 5 battle rating 8.0 Swedish premium tank destroyer, and it might be just a little bit overpowered right now. With all that out of the way, let's jump right into what this vehicle is capable of, starting with the weapons. Starting off with your primary weapon, you're going to be armed with a 155mm cannon. Now this thing mostly fires high explosive rounds, however it can carry smoke rounds, which I would recommend bringing purely because you do not get smoke in any other form on this vehicle. Now the gun is the main point of the VIDAR, so I'm going to spend quite a bit of time talking about the pros and the cons of it. Now I want to start off with the bad because, well, if you've played against the VIDAR, you probably wouldn't believe me, but it has quite a lot of downsides, weirdly enough. Compared to the upsides, it may as well have nothing wrong with it, but it still has downsides worth mentioning. First off, you have some of the slower rounds at this battle rating. Considering you almost exclusively fire HE, your shell velocity is going to be slower than basically everyone else in the lobby. However, this is not as big of a problem as it might seem because of a few things that we'll talk about later on. Now, in my opinion, the worst part about the VIDAR is actually just its gun depression, which it only has 4 degrees of. It's not enough to ruin the vehicle by any means, but it will be a pretty big annoyance. Next up is going to be the horizontal turret traverse. This is just abysmal. If you've played Soviet vehicles, it feels very similar to that. However, if you're used to NATO traverse speeds, you're probably gonna hate it. It's very slow, and considering the size of your turret, it's pretty easy for people to just gun you down the second that they see that your turret isn't facing directly at them. Next up is going to be the ready rack, which is just abysmal in this vehicle. You only get 2 rounds in the ready rack, which sounds really bad, and it is. Now fortunately, the replenishment speed is really good on this. You're not waiting 12 weeks for 1 round, so it's not the biggest deal. Combine that with the fact that the reload rate on this vehicle is good with or without the ready rack, 7.8 seconds stock with the ready rack. I don't know the exact time without it. I think it's around 13 or 14. It's still problematic, but not enough to really ruin the vehicle by any means. The last thing on the list of flaws is going to actually be something that has very little to do with the weapon, but I still want to talk about it, so I'm going to do it here in the list of other flaws. It's actually the fact that this vehicle is insanely easy to disable. I mean insanely easy. If you shoot the turret at all, you probably destroyed 3 major systems. Like, seriously. The barrel, the breach, the horizontal, and vertical turret traverse are all insanely large in this thing, and the speed it takes to replace the gunner in this vehicle, which you don't have commander override, so if the gunner dies you can't shoot for a while, it's insanely long. It's just absurd. If you want to kill a VIDAR, just disable literally anything by shooting the turret, and if you don't ammo rack the thing, it's not able to fight back anyway, so it's not gonna matter. Now that we're out of the way of the cons, let's talk about why the 155 on this thing is probably the single best band cannon that War Thunder will ever see. I want to start off with the round, because you see that right there? Yeah, that's 9 kilograms of TNT. And remember when I said the shell velocity wasn't great? Yeah, it's still really good for an HE shell, like insanely good for an HE shell. And I'm gonna tell you why in a little bit, why the velocity really doesn't matter. Also, I talked a little bit about the reload earlier. Yeah, 7.8 seconds for a 155, that's amazing. Abuse it. Use it before you lose it, because I guarantee at some point, they will probably affect it negatively. I don't think it'll happen soon because they don't really touch reload rates too often, but when they do, you'll probably notice that this is going to be on the list. Alrighty then, let's talk about why this thing is so overpowered. So, this vehicle, 1, gets a laser rangefinder. That's why no one cares about the shell velocity not being the greatest. It doesn't matter when you have a laser rangefinder all that much. And 2nd, because it has insanely good thermals. Most vehicles at this battle rating don't get thermals to begin with. A lot don't get stabilizers, which, yeah, you don't get one either, you don't need it, trust me. But the fact that you get insanely good thermals and a laser rangefinder on a band cannon with that good of a reload rate, 5 crew, and honestly not even that bad of armor when it comes to dealing with weaker autocannons, you're pretty overpowered, to say the least. And for those of you that don't know where to shoot most vehicles, not to worry, I'm going to show you and tell you where you can shoot to one-shot nearly everything that you're gonna see. Obviously, starting off with anything that is made of paper or just lightly armored, or God forbid it's open top. You can shoot the thing just about anywhere and you're not gonna have to worry about seeing that thing ever again. In a lot of cases, you don't actually even need to direct hit the thing to kill it. Now for Centurions and other similar British tanks, you're likely gonna want to shoot them either in the roof or in the turret neck. Now if they don't have a very thin roof, you can basically just always aim for the commander's hatch. This is how you're gonna deal with tanks like Tortoises and stuff like that. Just keep in mind that even if it looks like it'll go through and kill pretty easily from shooting the side of the turret neck or the back of the turret neck, keep in mind it's pretty common that that's just gonna take out tracks in the engine deck, but sometimes it still will kill. So just keep that in mind, shoot those spots at your own discretion. When it comes down to killing Soviet heavy tanks and MBTs, they're pretty similar across the board. Shoot the commander's hatch if you can, if not, the turret neck on the front just above the driver's hatch will usually kill. Whenever it comes to the IS-6, and for some reason the T-55AM-1, it's kind of inconsistent with that one, I don't know why. You can still do it, but it's a little less consistent, so just keep that in mind. Go for the hatch if possible, if not the turret neck should work most of the time. Next up is the M48 and Friends. Now, this tank is kind of finicky because you would think, based off its looks, that you could basically shoot it anywhere in the turret neck and be fine. You would be wrong. For some reason, the turret neck on the Pattons does not like to get overpressured, however, from the front it will basically every time if you shoot it directly below the breech. And if you can't hit that, the easiest spot and what you should always go for when fighting these is just go right for the commander's hatch. It's massive, it's pretty hard to miss. Now for just a last little tidbit before we move on to all the other stuff, yes, I know this entire video has already just been dedicated to one weapon, I know, I'm sorry, but you gotta be, you gotta be fair with me. The VIDAR is basically just a gun, that's all it is. So just a last little thing before we move on to everything else about the vehicle. You do have a roof-mounted 50 cal, it's good for dealing with helicopters. I'm leaving it at that. Okay, I'm gonna try and be quick about everything else, so I'm just gonna pack it all together. I know I normally segment it into weapons, armor, protection, all that. We're skipping that. So, first off for survivability, you got 5 crew, you have armor that's good enough to stop 50 cals and machine guns, not that great against autocannons, but it could definitely be worse. Actual guns will go right through you. You have a lot of modules, they'll probably eat a lot of spall for you. Next up is mobility, which you wouldn't expect to be very good on a vehicle like this. You would be wrong, the thing has a very good forward and reverse speed. It's honestly really surprising. The acceleration isn't that bad either. So yeah, you're pretty mobile, you're good to get from point A to B and then get into a sniping position, which yes, that is what you should be doing in this thing. Sniping in this thing is amazing, but it's also decent at brawling. So lastly, let's talk about the price. So for $50, you're going to get the VIDAR itself, 2,000 Golden Eagles, and 15 days of premium. I know that when this is going out, I literally just missed the sale by that much. I know, I'm very, very sorry. I tried recording footage for this thing 4 times. The first 2 times, it just recorded my desktop and not the gameplay. The last 2 times, I just didn't have a lot of time to record back to back, so I had to do multiple sessions. That's why this video is so late, and I am very sorry. With all that out of the way, do I believe the VIDAR is worth it? Absolutely. I think this thing is incredible for $50, honestly. Now, I know it's only a rank 5, so it can only research up to rank 6 without penalty, but even with that, I still think it's amazing for the price. Obviously, it's insanely overpowered, it's gonna get you to rank 6 Sweden super quickly, but it's also just fun and a really good SL grinder for ground. With all of that out of the way, I'd just like to say thank you all for watching. Yet again, I'm sorry for the delay. If there's any other vehicles you'd like to see in the future of this series, please let me know in the comments below. Have a good one.